The bakery smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, like warmth and comfort and all the good things that made a place feel like home. Morning light streamed through the front windows, making the display cases glow with rows of perfect cakes, chocolate towers with glossy ganache, delicate white layers decorated with sugar flowers, fruit tarts that looked like edible rainbows. Daniel Russo stood at the counter, ordering his usual black coffee and a croissant. He came here every Tuesday morning before heading to his office downtown, where he ran a real estate investment firm that his father had built and he'd expanded. The routine was one of the few constants in his life these days. He was 42, divorced for 5 years, and living in a penthouse apartment that felt more like a museum than a home. His ex-wife had remarried. His grown children were busy with their own lives. The business was successful, but success, he'd learned, didn't fill empty rooms or quiet evenings. He was waiting for his order when he heard the small voice behind him. "Excuse me, Miss Baker lady? I need to buy a cake, please." Daniel turned to see a little girl, maybe 5 years old, with blonde pigtails tied with small pink ribbons. She wore a pale pink dress that had been carefully pressed, but was clearly a hand-me-down, a size too big. In her small hands, she clutched a crumpled $5 bill like it was the most precious thing in the world. The baker, Mrs. Chen, who'd owned this place for 30 years, came around from behind the counter and knelt down to the little girl's level. "Hello, sweetheart. What kind of cake are you looking for?" The little girl's eyes were serious, her face solemn with the weight of her mission. "It's my mama's birthday. She's turning 29. I saved my allowance money. I have $5. She held up the bill proudly. "Can I buy a cake for $5? Daniel watched as Mrs. Chen's expression softened. He could see her doing the mental math. The cheapest cake in this bakery started at $25. But she smiled warmly at the child. "What's your name, honey?" Lily Martinez. "And I need a cake with chocolate because that's Mama's favorite, and maybe some flowers because she likes pretty things." And Lily's voice wavered slightly. "She works really hard and she's always tired. And I want to make her smile today." Mrs. Chen glanced up at the display cases, at the elaborate cakes that cost 10 times what this child had. Then she looked back at Lily's hopeful face. "Well, Lily, let me see what I can do. Why don't you look at the cakes and tell me which one you think your mama would like best?" Lily pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging it slightly as she studied each cake with intense concentration. She pointed to a modest chocolate layer cake with simple buttercream flowers. "That one? That's perfect for Mama." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He thought about his own children when they were that age. The earnest way they'd approach the world. The simple generosity that came before life taught them to be more careful with their hearts. He stepped forward before he could think better of it. "Excuse me," he said quietly to Mrs. Chen. "I'd like to purchase that cake. For the young lady." Mrs. Chen looked at him, understanding immediate in her eyes. But Lily turned around, her face confused. "But I have money," she said, holding up her $5. "I saved it myself." Daniel knelt down, the way Mrs. Chen had, bringing himself to Lily's height. "I know you did, and that's wonderful. But here's the thing. I was going to buy a cake today anyway for my office. We're celebrating something." He improvised quickly, "and I think that cake you picked is perfect. So how about this? You buy the cake with your $5, and I'll help with the rest, like partners." Lily studied him with the intense scrutiny only children possessed, trying to determine if this strange man in the dark coat was trustworthy. "Why would you do that?" Daniel considered the question. Why was he doing this? Because he was lonely? Because this little girl reminded him of his own daughter at that age? Because $5, clutched in small hands, represented something pure in a world that often felt cynical? Because, he said honestly, it's your mama's birthday, and birthdays should be special. And because I think anyone who has a daughter who loves them this much deserves the best cake in the bakery. Lily's face broke into a smile that could have lit the whole shop. "Okay, we can be partners." She held out her $5 bill with grave ceremony. Mrs. Chen took it gently. "One beautiful chocolate cake for Ms. Martinez coming right up." She disappeared into the back. Daniel stood and pulled out his wallet, but Lily tugged on his coat. "Mister, what's your name?" Daniel Russo." "Thank you, Mr. Daniel." Then, with the fearless affection of childhood, She wrapped her arms around his legs in a quick hug before stepping back. Something in Daniel's chest cracked open, someplace that had been locked up tight for years. Mrs. Chen returned with the cake, beautifully boxed with a pink ribbon. "For Ms. Martinez, with love from Lily." She handed it to the little girl, who took it carefully, reverently. "It's so pretty," Lily whispered. "Mama's going to love it so much." As she turned to leave, Daniel noticed she was heading toward the door alone. "Lily, where's your mother?" "She's at work. At the cleaning company on 3rd Street. She works there every day and then at the restaurant at night. I'm supposed to go to Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment until she gets home. But I asked if I could stop here first to get the cake." Lily looked worried suddenly. "I should go. Mrs. Rodriguez gets scared if I'm late." Daniel exchanged a glance with Mrs. Chen, a 5-year-old, navigating city streets, alone to buy a cake with saved allowance money, while her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. "How about I walk you to Mrs. Rodriguez's?" Daniel offered, "just to make sure the cake gets there safely." Lily considered this, then nodded. "Okay, but we have to be careful. The cake is very important." They walked 3 blocks together, Lily chattering about her mother, how she made the best pancakes even, when they didn't have syrup, how she sang in Spanish when she cleaned their apartment, how she was always tired but always smiled when Lily came home from school. Mrs. Rodriguez's building was worn but clean, in a neighborhood Daniel recognized as one he'd been looking at for a development project. He made a mental note. At the door, Lily turned to him. "Thank you for being my partner, Mr. Daniel. You're very nice." "You're very nice too, Lily. Your mama is lucky to have you." Lily beamed, then carefully carried the cake inside. Daniel stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me. There's a cleaning company on 3rd Street. Find out which one employs a woman named Martinez. Then find out if she has a second job at a restaurant. And find out where they live." By evening, Daniel had the information. Rosa Martinez, age 29, working 70 hours a week between 2 jobs, raising Lily alone after her husband died in a construction accident 3 years ago. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment 4 blocks from where Daniel had left Lily that morning. He made another call, then another. By the time the sun set, he'd arranged something that would either be seen as incredibly generous or incredibly intrusive. He hoped it was the former. The next morning, Rosa Martinez received a call from an attorney's office. There was, they said, a matter of inheritance to discuss. Could she come in? Confused and worried it was some kind of scam, Rosa arrived at the downtown office during her lunch break. She was shown into a conference room where Daniel sat with his own attorney. "Ms. Martinez," Daniel said, standing. "Thank you for coming. I'm Daniel Russo. I met your daughter yesterday." Rosa's face went immediately protective. "Lily, is she okay? Did something happen?" "She's fine. She's wonderful, actually. She came into a bakery where I was having coffee. She wanted to buy you a birthday cake with $5 she'd saved." Daniel smiled. "She loves you very much." Rosa's eyes filled. "She told me she had a surprise. I didn't know. She shouldn't have been." "She made it safely to Mrs. Rodriguez's," Daniel assured her. "But our conversation got me thinking. Ms. Martinez, I run a real estate investment firm. I've been looking at your neighborhood for a development project. And I need someone to help me understand what that community needs. Someone who lives there. Someone who knows it." He slid a folder across the table. "This is a job offer. Community liaison and development consultant. It pays $60,000 a year to start, with benefits and reasonable hours. Your insights would be invaluable in making sure we create something that actually serves the people who live there, not just something that displaces them." Rosa stared at the folder like it might bite her. "I don't understand. I clean offices. I have a high school education. Why would you—" "Because," Daniel said gently, "you raised a daughter who saves her allowance to buy her mother a birthday cake. Because you work 70 hours a week to give her a good life. Because the way she talks about you tells me you're someone who understands what matters. Those are the qualifications I'm looking for." Rosa opened the folder with shaking hands. "Read the offer letter. The salary, the benefits, the title. This is real?" she whispered. "Completely real. You'd start next month. We'd provide training. And there's one more thing." Daniel slid another folder across. I own several properties in your neighborhood. One of them is a 3-bedroom apartment that just became available. It's yours if you want it, at whatever rent you're paying now. Consider it part of the compensation package." Rosa looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel thought about that question. About his empty penthouse, about his busy, distant children, about the loneliness that success couldn't fill, about a little girl with $5 and enough love to buy the world. "Because your daughter reminded me that the best investments aren't in buildings or businesses. They're in people. And because I have a lot and you need a little help, and maybe," his voice caught slightly, "maybe sometimes the universe puts us in the right place at the right time to do something that matters." 2 months later, Daniel attended his first community meeting in the neighborhood where Rosa lived. She stood at the front of the room, confident now, knowledgeable, advocating fiercely for her neighbors' needs. Lily sat in the back doing homework at a table, occasionally looking up to smile proudly at her mother. After the meeting, Lily ran up to Daniel. "Mr. Daniel, we have a new apartment. It has a room just for me, and Mama doesn't cry anymore at night." Rosa approached, her face warm. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," Daniel said. "You're brilliant at this job. The project is better because of your input. This is a partnership, remember? Like I told Lily." Rosa laughed. "She tells everyone about her partner who helped her buy the cake." That night, Daniel returned to his penthouse, but it didn't feel quite as empty as before. He'd been invited to Lily's school play next week. Rosa had asked him to come to dinner the following month. Nothing fancy, she insisted, just thank you. He thought about how one morning in a bakery, one spontaneous act of kindness, had connected 3 lives in unexpected ways. How $5 clutched in a child's hand had been worth more than any investment he'd ever made. Sometimes the best returns came from the simplest gestures. Sometimes the cure for loneliness was just paying attention to the people around you, seeing their struggles, offering help without strings. Daniel looked out at the city lights and smiled. Tomorrow he'd go back to that bakery, order his coffee, maybe buy a cake, and remember that the sweetest things in life were often the ones we gave away.